Hey, deserving listeners, love is blind. Let's see what happens and see what happens.
You all right?
What's wrong?
Good. I'm good.
So they return back and he says, you good? I think maybe picking up on something, it sounds like. She asks, what's wrong? He says, I'm good. All right.
What's wrong?
Nothing's wrong. What?
Something's wrong?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so it's possible that he exhibited behavior that indicated that something was wrong, and Chelsea is picking up on that, and right now he's denying that. It's possible, but the way it looks in the edit is that there isn't anything wrong. There's no reason to believe anything's wrong. And he was the one saying, is everything okay with you? And in this moment, he seems pretty easy going, and she's like doubling down on that, and I don't know what's happening. She could be displacing or projecting, meaning that she actually is the one that is not okay and she can't tolerate that, so she's projecting onto him that he's not okay. Or she is confused and doesn't feel close and has no way of directly talking. You know, like, I would just hope that, given what we saw, that she would say, hey, can we talk about something? Because when you said that thing about AD, it's not a huge deal, but it did kind of trigger me a little bit regarding my previous relationships where they cheated on me. And then you went over to her and were talking with her and hugging her and stuff, and I don't know, I don't think you were flirting, but it just lets you know, like, it really tweaked me. So I think you should just know that, so that in the future you can kind of keep that in mind. Or what are you thinking? Are you attracted to AD? Or, I just need some reassurance here. That would be fine. That would be helpful. That would be okay. That's not unethical or wrong. So I just hope she would say something. But what she's doing is saying, oh, what's wrong? Something's wrong. And then I wonder if this is a conscious or subconscious tactic to get into a fight. Some people will do that. They will just not know what to do and will provoke the other person to get upset or angry or rejecting, and then they have something tangible to hold on to. Let's see how this goes.
I promise.
I think you're lying to me. I think you're lying.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, we'll see how she does. She was pretty healthy in the past, but we didn't see her really put to the test. But I think you're lying. It's a problem when people speak with such assuredness about their own ideas. And it's very, very helpful when we all can recognize our shortcomings, our bias, our filters, and be humble about our perceptions. As therapists, it's very important. I hope I exhibit that. When I say, well, it kind of looks like this, I will almost always say something like, but I don't know, because we don't have enough data and I could be biased. I'm not just saying that. I believe it. And I've drilled it into my head. And I will, whenever I'm saying anything about anything, I'm thinking, well, you've been wrong before. It's this constant reminder. And if I don't have that reminder, then I'll just run away with it, right? So what she's doing, she could do so much better if she just said, well, I think she'd do well if she were just to check in with herself, just take a break, take a breath and go, okay, where am I? What am I doing? My feet are on the ground. What's the objective thing right here? What do I need? What do I want? And then approach him. I don't think she's done that. I think she's just swimming in it. Given what we saw earlier, I think where she's at is she thinks that he no longer loves her, and she has been triggered. Her trauma, her personality issue has been triggered, and she is fairly convinced that he does not love her and that he wants to be with other women. And in terms of what we saw in the edit, that's a huge stretch. It's possible. And so she's convinced of that. And it's not her fault, but the distortion is a result of trauma and abandonment, and probably not the result of being cheated on, and more likely the result of childhood abandonment. Anyway, so she's convinced of that, and she feels like she has license to kind of poke at him a bit. That's kind of maybe what's happening. I don't know.
What's wrong?
When everyone else was like paying attention to their ladies, like I was just standing there like by myself the whole time.
Okay, so it's good. She's at least talking about what's wrong, and it's not that there's something wrong with him. She has a bone to pick, and then she's really exaggeratory with it. You know, like the way she said it. It's just another tip that it'll feel correct when you're saying it, but it'll throw off the conversation because he could be like, what are you talking about? The whole time, literally the entire party, you were just standing there by yourself and I didn't pay attention to you the whole time, the entire time. Yeah, so you want to be specific. Anytime you're saying all the time or never, all the time, it's a problem, or almost all the time. So, just say, I felt this way, or there was at least one moment where I felt this way, because you can cause people to get defensive and hurt, really, because he put a lot of effort, or at least some effort, into being there with her and reassuring her. And to just have that discounted and thrown away, right? And then it can be very discouraging if you're in his shoes. You're just like, well, what's the point in being nice to you and loving you if later you're just going to rewrite the story as if that never happened, right? But then she's getting here specifically, or like when you made that comment about AD in her body. Okay, so maybe, let's see how they do here. The best case scenario is he's able to hold on and be differentiated. He looks less intoxicated than earlier. And he's able to see the woods for the trees and not defend himself and not get into the specifics, but get to the core of the matter, which is that she feels hurt. She feels worried that he doesn't love her or he's attracted to other people. So I hope that he sees that.
He made a comment about AD in her body, and I felt so uncomfortable that I called it out. And then the whole time you spent talking to AD when I was by myself. And then I see you spinning her around, looking at her body. It made me feel very type.
Okay, good. She's being direct. It's assuming a lot, but she's being direct, and it's okay for her to have this preference. I would hope that at some point she can say, well, that's how I felt in the moment, but I think I was maybe a little paranoid, but still, I don't want Jimmy to be doing stuff like that. That's okay. But that, it all depends on how she could help him a little bit by speaking a little bit more tentatively, like throwing in a phrase like, I don't know if you were flirting, or I don't know what was happening in your heart and in your mind and in your pants, but it looked like this kind of, and that made me feel bad. That kind of tentativeness, or I'm guessing you didn't mean to do this to me, but something like that might soften the blow, because when people feel attacked, then they defend, and then you spiral into conflict. So let's see how he does.
I never spin her around.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so common. If I could grab Jimmy, I'd be like, no. When you hear a lot of things, someone's upset at you, and you just pick out one tiny little part of what they're saying. Like, what's the bigger picture, Jimmy? What is she saying? Even if that never happened, but I think it did. But even if it didn't happen, what's the core issue here? It's just like that. You could give 15 points, and someone will pick out one. No, that never happened. Okay, well, what about the other 14? Plus, what about what I'm basically saying? So, yeah, this is going almost exactly like I thought it would. A few videos ago, I was just like, well, if they do have a problem, this is potentially how it's going to look. At least I feel like I was predicting this.
I talked to her, and all I did was gas Clay up the entire time. I never spun her around.
And I was standing at the bar by myself, just hanging out there watching.
You were nowhere near us.
So in classic form, neither one of them are right. She was ordering a drink, and Amy was right with her. So he's wrong because she was behind him, so he might not have known she was there. But she wasn't just standing there all by herself. She was ordering her drink, and Amy was right there. And then I think she and Amy, her and Amy actually went to some chairs and continued talking. So she's wrong, and he's wrong. So this is so common, and it's universal, really. And it's so fixable. It's like there's some principles to follow. Like, don't argue about the details. Attend to the core and try to tell people your core. Like, she could derail this by saying, okay, well, whatever the details are, I'll just tell you that I felt jealous, I felt hurt, I felt disrespected, I felt worried, and that's how I felt. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's what happened for me. Then that'll help, and I don't want to lose you. That's why I felt those things. That could provoke a much different response from him, and that's not debatable. It's a very frequent phrase that I will tell couples in my office, that you want to, in conflict, you want to gravitate towards statements that are not debatable, meaning that it doesn't depend on each person's memory. And it's not debatable that right now she feels something, probably abandonment or hurt or worry, something like that. Typically, that's what's going on. It's either a fear or it's a pain. It's hurt feelings or worries. So she could say that, and it's not debatable. No one can tell her otherwise because no one knows what she's feeling. And that will get away from this detail conflict. And so she could derail it. He could derail it by seeing through her attack and perhaps false memories and see the core feeling. Imagine, if we could stop him and say, and I do this a lot in my office as well, I'd stop Jimmy and say, okay, regardless of the details, what do you think she's feeling right now? And maybe if you have a hard time coming up with it, what do you think she's hurt by, and or what is she afraid of? And then if you at least know that, then it gives you an opportunity to push past it. Like, he could say, okay, well, maybe that happened, and I don't really remember that well. It's not entirely my memory, but it doesn't really matter. What I think is happening right now is you felt hurt, or you were worried that I am attracted to AD, or I want to be with other people, or you were hurt that I left you alone. Is that what I'm hearing? And then that would give her a chance to say, well, yeah, because, you did this, that. And then Jimmy could say, well, okay, I don't remember entirely in the exact same way you do, but regardless, I'm so sorry. That's not my, and then repair. But if they stick to this style, which almost everyone does, it's impossible to repair. And even if the next day they're okay with each other, this is not resolved. And the next fight you have, it's just piles on top of this one.
I'm not into AD at all.
No, I'm not.
If you heard any context of that conversation, I went up and told Clay.
I didn't, though, because I walked away because I was so uncomfortable. That's how, that conversation made me feel.
Okay.
So he kind of saw through it and kind of addressed it. I'm not into AD at all. It's still detail conflict, but closer to the mark, because she never said that directly. So, she never said, it kind of looked like you were into AD. She never said that directly, and he is reading between the lines for that. But he could read further between the lines and say, look, she loves me. She is worried she's going to lose me, and she got triggered, or she had enough reason to believe that might be happening. So she feels hurt. And so I'll see past it. Now, I will say the way that it looks, the primary responsibility is on her to investigate and speak from that place. It's also his responsibility as well to try, and that's how I phrase it to people. But when they're in my office and there's a situation like this, it's not always, or it shouldn't be the spouse's responsibility to have to be a detective. But I also say that when we're hurt and afraid, we're not always going to be differentiated and speak from that place. So in the moments where that doesn't happen, then the other spouse can save the day by looking or asking. And what I eventually get couples to, the place where they will ask very specifically, okay, well, remember what Kirk said? They might even have it written down. Okay, so someone is hurt or afraid, and maybe both of us. So what are you afraid of, or what are you hurt by? And what am I hurt by? What am I afraid of? And then at least you can start to think about that and speak to it. Oftentimes that will derail and get people to talk about what's actually happening, and repair is possible. So he says, I'm not into AD, and then we'll rewind it because she denies that. So she either doesn't know what she is reacting from, or she's so ashamed of it and she's just denying it, or she doesn't want to give him the satisfaction of being right or something. Because I'm thinking it's a perfect opportunity for her to be like, well, yeah, that was what I was worried about. Let's rewind.
I'm not into AD at all.
No, I'm not.
If you heard any context of that conversation.
See, she says, no, it's just, wonder what she would have said. I think she would have said, it's inappropriate or something. But so that points to either and it kind of looks like she literally just doesn't know why she feels bad. And I don't know either, so I'm just guessing. But she hasn't said why she's actually feeling bad. She's just being accusatory. And that'd be fine if she could also say, what's behind it. Because the reason why you want to say that is because people love you. And when you tell them about a vulnerability, it will engage their natural empathy and compassion for you. So trying to get someone to understand something by accusing them of things and not revealing your vulnerability, which almost always happens, which is what she's doing. She's just like, you did something wrong, you did something wrong, you did something wrong. And all he's doing is defending himself. If she were just to say, hey, my feelings are hurt, or I'm worried, or I am being triggered about my past experiences with infidelity, and I'm sad and I'm scared and I'm confused. If that's what he says, then your spouse will, even if you're the one that caused it, as long as you're differentiated enough, you will feel compassion. Be like, oh, like when you see your partner trip and fall and hurt their knee, it's automatic. Oh my God, you run over there, you feel bad. It's the same when it comes to this sort of thing. You want to show them your knee. I'm hurting. And then it's like, oh, and that is a completely different mindset. But you have to trust, which is hard if you don't have a history that would tell you it's safe to trust.
Went up and told Clay.
I didn't, though.
And by the way, that is the definition. It's part of the definition of differentiation and secure attachment. We often talk about avoidant, preoccupied, and disorganized attachment, but we don't often talk about, well, how do we define secure attachment? Well, one of the hallmarks is having trust enough in other people so that when you're in a tense situation like this and you're having a lot of feelings, you trust the other person loves you and that there is a path forward, and that your worries or paranoias or triggers or the way it looks is quite possibly distorted or a misunderstanding or something. You don't know, but you have enough experience since you were born telling you that people are good and that I am lovable. That is another part of the definition. Just a little bit on this is that we develop working models of self and working models of others, meaning that our beliefs, our assumptions, and when we're treated well through repetitive attunement, enough attunement from parents, we conclude, oh, I'm lovable enough and I'm good enough, and other people are good enough and trustworthy and loving. And it doesn't always work out that way, but generally speaking, that's the deal. Okay, I can relax. And when bad things happen, one, I know that I'm a good person, I'm pretty sure. And if I'm being treated badly by someone else that's close to me, I'll assume that there's a mistake here that's happening, or they're just having a bad day. It's not the rule, it's the exception. Whereas if you are raised in an environment where you are led to believe that, and you develop a working model of self that you're not lovable and you're not good enough, then when something happens like this, you're just like, well, there it goes. This is the rule. I was experiencing the exception until now. So here we go again. And when you have that assumption, then you accuse or run away, and self-fulfilling prophecy. Or you have a working model of others that is bad. It's like other people don't love others. They are cold or mean or abusive or harmful, inconsiderate or something, unsafe, whatever it was that you experienced. And then when you're trying to have a relationship, you're like, I think this is the exception to the rule. Is this the exception? It feels like the exception. I hope the rule doesn't kick in, and then when there's any sign, it's like, there it is. No one is trustworthy. Why did I even open up? It's the rule that everyone will abandon me, or everyone is abandoning or something. And here we go. So secure attachment is having a working model of self that is good. I'm not perfect, but I'm good. Other people are good. They're not perfect, but they're good. When you have a working model of self that is good and maybe exaggeratedly good, and other people can't be trusted, that's what avoidant emerges from, because you rely on the self. You might even amp up your ego because you need to rely on somebody. And so you're like, I can't depend on others. I just know that. I can only depend on the self. And this is what little children will develop. We're talking 18 months, they will start to solidify these working models. The working model of other people are good and maybe great, and I am nothing, that's preoccupied. The working model that other people are horrible and dangerous and I am worthless is disorganized.
Told Clay.
I didn't though, because I walked away because I was so uncomfortable. That's how like that conversation made me feel.
Okay.
And
I mean, if you're uncomfortable, I'm sorry you're uncomfortable.
Okay, it's going better, and she's communicating at least one feeling. I felt uncomfortable, all right. And then he says, okay. And he says, if you're uncomfortable, I'm sorry you're uncomfortable. I don't know if that's a non-apology, like, well, I'm sorry for you that you were uncomfortable, meaning that you're weird that you're uncomfortable, and I'm sorry, just saying the word sorry when you're not really apologizing. But I believe in Jimmy, I guess, that he's saying to himself, well, I don't think she has a reason to be uncomfortable, but she is, and so it's my responsibility to take note of that and understand that and not do something like that again. I mean, that might be a little too far, but something in that camp. But I can't tell from his facial expression. It kind of looks like that.
it was just very odd.
There wasn't anything like flirty. There wasn't anything you wouldn't have wanted to hear. If you were a part of that conversation, you would have known all that.
Yeah, and that might help. That might help. I worry, though, that she's not hearing him in this moment because she still feels hurt or rejected or whatever it is that she feels. But yeah, that could help. I think it would do well for him if he were to say, well, yeah, there were a lot of things that were happening, and most of what was happening was not flirting, but we were both talking about you and Clay. And I was just bonding with her as a friend, really. But absolutely, there were a couple things in there that looked at a certain way would make you feel uncomfortable, which I get. Me talking about her body, me going over there and hugging her, and I guess twirling her around. I don't remember that, but if that happened, then yeah, I get that. But just to let you know, if you were there were a lot of things that were happening that were just normal conversations. She might even want to hear that.
It made me feel icky. And I just sat there, like, it was so uncomfortable for me.
I'm really hoping at some point she can look at that feeling and at least have the question mark of maybe it's not him. Maybe this isn't entirely him. Maybe this is exaggerated or amplified by my history, at least in part. Maybe a little ick or a little uncomfortable or a little hurt is understandable and rational, but maybe I am amping it up. It's been amped up for me because of my history. I just hope that all of us should have that question. And without that question, and maybe the answer is no, but without that question, we're lost in the woods.
And like the fact that you weren't reading the room made me really, really sad.
Why are you walking away?
Okay, it's good that she's crying because that will reveal how she's feeling. And she's walking away, but, Jimmy, just go hug her. I think that'll solve it.
Why are you walking away?
And by the way, I imagine a lot of people when they watch a scene like this, and I see it often in the discourse around reality TV shows, is that people will say that one person was wrong, the other person was right. Or people will just say they hate everybody. I hear that a lot too. I hate everyone, but I hate this person less. And it's very common to have that. When I'm training therapists, I'll show them a scene like this, and I'll ask them to just think and react and quietly write down their feelings, how they see the situation. And then after everyone's done, we'll go around the room and share, and you'll hear a wide variety of reactions. And most of the reactions will be like, essentially, I think this person is wrong, and I think that person is reasonable. And that way of thinking can be useful in cases like abuse or something. But if it's not that, which this doesn't look like that, then it's not useful to think about who's more right or who's more wrong, especially in the moment. What is important, especially as a therapist, is what is the way forward? And just get out of that paradigm. And if you, in your relationships, can at least have that as an option, because sometimes someone might literally be wrong, including yourself, so sometimes you want to ask that question, but people get real locked in on that. And, for example, she walked away, and he could claim, and so a lot of people do, it's like, well, she walked away from me, and I didn't do anything wrong. So end of story, and I'm just going to ignore her, and I'm going to just go to sleep. A more rational approach, workable approach is, well, what can I do in this moment to make things better? If everyone does that, then things tend to work out. And if he just said, well, I could walk over there, and so that's what he's doing, and I could hug her, and I could reassure her. Do I feel like I'm in the wrong, and therefore I have to do that? I have to make up? He'd probably say no, but there are bigger fish to fry. The thing that I think about sometimes, even for myself, is, okay, when I am on my deathbed and I'm reflecting on my life, what will I want to see? Would I rather see a life in which I stuck to my guns and I said, I was right, and I refused to give in? Or would I like to see a life in which I maybe even sacrificed at times and was magnanimous or forgiving or loving, regardless of how I'm being treated, with the people that I feel like deserve it, and I was happy in the end, and I had to swallow my pride at times, or I had to forego any sort of recognition that I'm in the right? Which life do I want to see? Well, to me, the second one is what I want to see.
Chelsea.
Because you're just gonna try and make me feel bad, and
I'm not trying to make you feel
it's my
bad.
fault. All the girls talked about how great their connections were, and like how
I
amazing.
bragged about.
Yeah, she's spiraling. This is not a good sign. She's generalizing and comparing and spiraling. Now, maybe she's intoxicated too. She'll feel better in the morning, or they'll work it out. But if she didn't say what she just said, honestly, I think things would have potentially been recoverable. And then the idea is she would feel different. She would feel more secure. She would feel better. And that thought that she just said wouldn't even occur to her, because it wouldn't be felt anymore. What she's saying right now is probably coming from the feeling. And it also kind of illuminates that she might deep down hate herself on a certain level. I mean, that's a colloquial way of putting it, but she's like, you're going to make it all my fault. And this, like, she doesn't have something to stand on. So, yeah, wow. Wow. What a 180. I think this is the first day.
Every single person, I bragged about you. Ken bragged about you. Clay bragged about you. Johnny bragged about you. Now all of them know where I stand with you. I felt comfortable. I felt comfortable. Huh?
I felt so disconnected from you tonight.
Okay. Where's that question? Why? It's good that she's sort of scaling back a little bit. She's just saying it was strange for me. It was odd. Okay. Better. Instead of it's all your fault, it's I felt disconnected. It's odd. Strange for me. Okay. What does that mean? If I was to take a guess, I would say that she hopes for there to be a strong connection and trust that could never exist in a relationship that is only like 11 days old. And it worries her, which is fine. And she has an unrealistic idea of what a relationship is supposed to look like. She's looking at everyone else all the other couples is saying, they all have that connection. And no, they don't. they don't. I mean, maybe she doesn't hear that information. She probably hasn't. But, that notion of like comparing, right? And, take it from me as a person that not only treats a lot of people, and as a therapist, they tell me their secrets, things that they don't reveal even to their closest friends, like my marriage sucks, that kind of thing. Also, as a therapist friends will sometimes confide in me about things. I'm here to tell you that like no marriage is the Instagram Disneyland version, like literally none. No person is the fairy tale Disneyland version of those characters. Everyone has relational traumas. Everyone has triggers. Everyone has relational reactivity. So I don't know. I'm just yammering. I'm worried, and not only about this relationship, because it's starting to look like, well, honestly, like other relationships we've seen on this show. I'm reminded of Zeneb and Cole, and Danielle and Nick, and is that all that I can remember off the top of my head? Yeah. So it's almost the same, right? It's very similar, and he isn't helping necessarily. I think he's holding on pretty well, but his lack of access to emotion and expression and being able to read the room. I mean, if it's one thing you can kind of point to as a theme in his behavior, is he has a hard time reading the room. When he was with Jessica, and I think he was legit on the fence, he just shut down as she was getting like mildly upset, and then she got more upset. When she asks him in bed, like, what did you first see about me? And he's like, you have big white square teeth. He eventually came around and said, I love your face and your eyes and all that kind of stuff. But I just think he's a doof and just doesn't really read the room, or he's a little oblivious or something. So I don't know, just the fact that she is generalizing that so much. The other possibility is that she actually isn't really connected with him, independent of the other things, that she's connected when they're together, but as soon as there was a little bit of a rift, the floor fell out from underneath her, and she doesn't actually love him. And she never did, because she's not really in connection with her feelings, and or it was just a very fast, overwhelming process of like, I feel like this is the one, So I don't know. But I'm going to change my prediction for them. Prediction, after one day in person, prediction is a no for both of them. That's too bad. And I worry about her, because if she has this kind of reactivity as the way it's presenting, which I don't know, then that's going to follow her the way it does with everyone on all these shows that present this way. I mean, I don't know that, obviously, but that's the common scenario. There's a lot of people with this kind of trauma and this kind of reactivity, and it's really hard to recover from, hard to be aware of. But without any self-awareness, of which I haven't heard any from her. From AD, we heard her say things, I'm in therapy and I know this about, or Clay for that matter. He'll pull out of it and he'll be like, I got this ego, I have a problem, I need help with this. We're not hearing anything along those lines with her. We didn't hear that from Zeneb either. And I don't know if I was reading Zeneb right, but it's much less of a positive prognosis when the individual in question has literally no self-awareness, no insight. And that is a hallmark of the more severe issues, which is ironic, right? As the trauma is more intense and the issue and the personality becomes more dysfunctional, you are, by definition, having less insight into your problem. Ironically, if you have a little bit of a problem, you're more able to have insight into it. So people with a lot of relational trauma, they have it both coming and going, right? They have a lot of issues, and they're prevented from knowing what's going on and what to work on. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.